Hello and welcome. I hope you are having a great day. Today we're going to be going over the 17 key traits of becoming the chief engineer. For those of you who may already be in that position, this is just kind of a quick refresher on the core competencies and what to focus on and what to keep reaffirming you're doing the right thing. So I'll jump right into it. Share my screen here. So I'll start with this, and then I'll kind of show you what we have going on along the sides here. So again, these are the essential skills of a chief engineer. The first thing, as the chief engineer, you're going to have complete oversight of the maintenance department. So what does that mean? Not only are you going to be reviewing the maintenance department, so you're going to have your line level staff, you're also going to have your leadership team. Most cases, you're going to be overseeing the landscaping crew. In some instances, I've even been responsible for the shipping and receiving department. Next, what you're going to want to focus on is developing very strong partnerships with housekeeping, front desk, and security. I mean, you're going to want to be doing it with everyone, but I would say those are going to be the three pillars that if you're going to focus on in a hotel, that they're going to be the best bet. I mean, they're going to have the most interaction. They're going to be able to provide you with the most help, whether it comes to blocking a room, assistance with labor, identifying issues, just everything in and out. I mean, the housekeeping department in the hotel has the largest staff, the largest amount of resources, the most amount of eyes on things, and kind of to steal a slogan from the TSA, right? If it's see something, say something. They are going to be the biggest proponent to your success. Their ability to have so many people in all the rooms that are doing things that your team is not typically doing, pulling couches away from walls, moving beds, testing, doing the shower curtain back and forth, shower doors. I mean, they're almost like a beta tester for the rooms or common areas that you have going on. So it's really great to have strong relationships with the housekeeping department because of that. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in different hotels and resorts where there's just this, not a hatred, but almost a catty-like relationship between housekeeping and engineering. They're at odds for some reason, and it's really unfortunate because when they partner up with each other, they can be so instrumental in the key to that organization's success because they just create an unstoppable force. I was fortunate enough to work with some really amazing people in the housekeeping department, and it really helps set the teams on fire. I mean, you develop these cross trainings with each one of the departments. Anyway, it's just like duplicating your staff, so there's no reason to not to partner up with any one of those departments or all the departments, but those three are going to be your best bet. So I put down there, being the director of engineering is a lot like joining a gym. So if you were to start working out for the first time and you go into a gym, you're going to notice that there's tons of equipment, right? Let's assume it's a large facility. And in that, you're going to be kind of attracted to certain things, maybe some shiny new piece of equipment over there. I have no idea what it does. You're going to see some people doing, one-legged, arm presses on a Swiss ball. And you're going to go, well, hey, maybe I should be doing that. But you have to remember that there are only a few things that you need to focus on that are really going to move the needle the most, right? You look at some of the people that are in the best shape. I don't see them on those obscure pieces of equipment, and I don't see them trying all these funky things. They stick to what works, right? I mean, the big compound movements that involve everything. Well, the same is exactly true for you as the chief, right? You're going to be pulled in 1,000 different directions every single day. People are competing for your attention. They want to know if they can have a moment of your time. What they have going on is the most important thing they have in the world to them, right? If they're one of your outlets and the light bulb's out, they're gonna scream and yell and try and get you to come over to do what you're doing. Well, I can tell you at the last place I worked, we did over 20,000 work orders a year, and that was what was documented. If we were to get distracted by all the little things that weren't important, you can see how quickly that they add up. I mean, you're focusing on the programs, policies, and procedures, and then the day-to-day operations of things. But you have to remember that you can't get pulled away to the things that aren't going to have a big impact. So making sure that you're asking yourself one question at every single opportunity you can remember, which is, are you doing the most important thing right now, right? Is what you're doing creating the most amount of value? And if not, you need to kind of reevaluate what you're doing at that moment, and either put it on the back burner, assign it to somebody else, or just put it back in your CMMS and get it on the schedule. But don't get pulled away. So just like joining a gym, there's going to be a lot of different things in there, and make sure that you're focusing on the items that are really going to help you grow, and not going to develop one small portion that may or may not have the benefit that it intends to. Next, your engineering team, right? The most important thing. You're going to have, if you have a small team, if you have a big team, doesn't really matter. I'm going to kind of go over somewhere in the middle grounds. Let's just assume you have somewhere between 6 and 20 people. Coaching, right? You can call it a couple different things. Some people don't like the term coaching. That's okay. Maybe there's another term you like: leading, mentoring, or just being on the team. It is so important that you meet with your leadership team. So if you're the director, I'm assuming you have some supervisor or a manager on your team, but you absolutely need to meet with them weekly, to go over whatever it is that you have going on. And the same is absolutely true for your leadership team and meeting with their staff. So let's say you have a manager and a supervisor, and they have 2 people underneath them, whatever the layout is. They need to be meeting with them regularly and consistently, getting that feedback, creating that loop, and making sure that you're in constant contact, right? You have to remember that when people leave jobs, you're always going to hear it. They don't leave their job, they leave their boss. And they don't leave their boss because they don't like their boss. And they don't like their boss because they can't relate to their boss. And they can't relate to him because the boss never talks to them. So it's this perpetual cycle that exists where you stop talking, you stop creating this feedback, you stop having that reciprocity, you stop contributing to what they believe is their overall success. You stop recognizing them. I mean, I could go on and on. It just develops this horrible habit that is going to foster a scarcity mindset, as well as just a negative environment, because people are going to not think that you're approachable. They're going to feel that whatever they do, they don't get feedback from. People want to know how they're doing, and they want to know it constantly. It's the old phrase, right? People will forget what you do for them, but they'll never forget how you make them feel, right? The Maya Angelou quote. So making sure that you're meeting with them and you're there for them physically, literally, and then emotionally. You have to be available. Next on that list I had was controlling your expenses, right? That there's nothing worse than at the end of the month when you look at your P&Ls and things that you could have absolutely controlled, such as labor, overtime. We had to do overtime reports, and what we ended up doing was it got so out of whack. Was we would send people home if we pulled a time report and they were overtime. And how did this overtime occur? Well, it wasn't because we had all these crazy projects that were going on. It was because they were punching in too early. And if the clock registered them 7 minutes beforehand, what ends up happening is that gives them an extra 0.15 of an hour. So now they have this extra quarter of an hour that they were doing either at the beginning of their shift or at the end of their shift, which was resulting in overtime expenses. And we were having to justify that, which at the end of the week or end of 2 weeks, you can't justify it. So everybody looks bad. And controllable costs are, as it says here, costs that can be influenced or regulated by the manager. For example, direct materials, So if you know you have a project going on and you either bought over or under, I mean, you should be able to forecast that pretty well at this stage. Direct labor, what we just talked about, and then this one I have somewhat of a disagreement with, but I put it in there anyway, which are your utilities. Now, for the most part, you are able to forecast your utilities, right? If you live in a mountain climate, a colder area, sure, it's tough to predict when you're going to have those cooling or heating degree days. Maybe they're going to extend, or maybe the opposite's true, where you're going to have those cooling degree days. They can be a challenge for sure, and nobody can predict what the utilities are going to do at the end of the year. I remember receiving letters from our trash company that said that rates are going up, right? They just had something with a contract with the city was awarded to somebody else, and all of a sudden it changed our trash haul by about $5,000 a year. Energy companies notorious for doing it as well, right? You're going to get an energy spike. You're going to have maybe the same with your water and sewer. But again, at the end of the month, you should be able to control it. When we would meter and monitor our landscaping, we knew exactly on a weekly basis where we were, if there was any major leaks, and that's all done through the next step, which is the systems, making sure that you are monitoring things consistently and constantly. So assigning some of your team members to do meter reads, whether that's electrical, water, gas, taking it, and just don't take the utility company's word for it, right? If they say that you used X amount of decatherms per month that month and your bill is X, make sure you're having somebody verify it. Meters are so inexpensive to purchase. I just left a trade show last week at the Southern California Facilities Expo, and they had these electrical meters that you could put on your switchgear. And I thought that they were going to be really expensive. I had a really great conversation with the guy, and even their most elaborate system out the door to monitor the energy that you're using and to submeter it on certain aspects. Again, this is the top of the line part that they had, was $3,500. Now, for a large facility whose electric bill is $40,000 a month, $3,500 is very justifiable, especially on large pieces of equipment, to make sure that it's operating efficiently and that you're protecting it. So the majority of the time you are going to spend on your systems, procedures, policies, controls. So that's developing your preventative maintenance programs, your standard operating procedures, how you're assigning your daily workloads, and then training your staff. So I put in here that if you're a new facility manager or chief engineer, that when you come into the position, a lot of people have a tendency, like they want to make their mark. They want to make a name for themselves, and they want to set the world on fire, right? They want to show them who they hired as the best person in the world. So they have this tendency to come in and want to reinvent the wheel. But your goal is not to reinvent the wheel. It's to keep the momentum of what has been working going. And after you've done a thorough evaluation on other systems, policies, procedures, you put a stop to it and you put something else in there, right? You're going to be in a constant state of refinement and making sure that whatever you have going at the facility and that's working well, keep that going. Why not? It's okay. It's not about taking credit, and you have to remember you're playing for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back, right? So stop thinking that you're going to go in there and change everything. There's absolutely going to be low-hanging fruit for you to take advantage of, and you will be able to make great impact and some significant improvements. That will all come. So I'm sure if you're new to this, you're going to be very excited for this role, but just take a deep breath, step back, and make sure that you don't get too overzealous with things and start changing everything, because people that have been there for a while really do take pride in the way that certain things have been done. One great thing about being a chief engineer, facility manager, or anyone in the maintenance world is if you can foresee it, you can prevent it, right? So we have a unique ability to predict the future. We can tell what's coming. If you don't do maintenance on a certain piece of equipment for a certain period of time, you will have failure. and ensuring you are executing an effective preventative maintenance program that is sustainable and maintainable so that it doesn't get done in vain. Your preventative maintenance program might need a preventative maintenance program at the end of the year because you were doing it wrong or something happened along the lines. So what do I mean by worthless? By worthless, I mean, let's say you start a preventative maintenance program, but it's only been accounted for up to 90%, maybe even higher, even 95%. If you can't dedicate 100% of the resources you need, time, labor, materials, can't coordinate it, whatever the case may be, it's going to end up costing you more money, because the last thing, the thing you'll end up doing is creating a system where you're only able to you're not able to bring the piece of equipment or whatever you're working on back up to its best available condition. You're not able to perform the actual preventative maintenance task on that because your team is rushed, you don't have the right parts, you weren't able to schedule and block the room. So what ends up happening is ultimately you end up prolonging the program and skipping something. So what ends up being created is the aggregate of marginal losses. It's where these little things just keep adding up, adding up, adding up, and then eventually you're going to have, at some moment in time, multiple failures. They might not even be systemic, but they're going to be caused by a preventative maintenance program, or any program for that matter, that you're not able to see through to the end. So make sure when you do start something, take everything into consideration. Proper planning prevents poor performance, as they say, and it's worth an extra week. It's worth an extra delay in the beginning on the front end to ensure that whatever you're going to be initiating gets seen through to the end, because no one wants to hear halfway through a program that something they were doing along the way wasn't able to get completed. I'll never forget when we were doing certain programs and the staff would come to me and say, "Oh, well, we weren't able to do this on in some of the rooms." And I'll say, "Well, how many of the rooms have we not done it in so far?" "Oh, just these 10. And you're thinking, okay, wait a minute, 10, that's not a lot. We can go back, we can correct that, but the time to go back and correct it is still going to take away from other things. What do we need to do?" Ended up having to rush order a few parts, and that was okay. But getting feedback is exactly what you needed, because I would have hated to have gone through that entire program skipping on something small that I knew was a nuisance issue. Tracking your department goals. Think about the gym story again. I'm going to be going back to that a lot. This doesn't need to be fancy. You don't need to come up with some really elaborate program. It's really simple, but the best thing you can do is to communicate it after you've developed them. So if it's you and you're creating your goals, if it's you plus your leadership team, if you need to involve your executive committee, right? You need to go over whatever it is that you're striving to do in that department. You need to document it. You need to put a due date. You need to put in a signing. It's one of those things that you're not physically going to be able to accomplish all of the goals that you set out for your department on your own. And that's okay, because it's not, again, you're not playing for the name on the back of the jersey. You're playing for the team. So you're going to be assigning this to a lot of different members on your team. Maybe it's going to be your leadership team. Maybe it's going to be your staff direct. Maybe in some cases, if you don't have a staff, it's going to be to your vendors. Regardless, it's something that's documented, it's trackable, it's referenceable, something that you can put out to other departments, right? It's always great to take your department goals, not only share them internally with those that you need to, but also you can print this off during maybe some management meetings that you have. You can make 10 copies, hand them out and say, "Hey, everybody, I just wanted to let you know, 2019, these are our engineering department goals. We went through our building maintenance software and identified the top 10 issues, and we're going to be cutting those down by 50%. In addition to that, here's some of our internal goals." So any assistance that you can offer, and maybe there's some specific areas. Let's take the laundry preventative maintenance example right here. There's not necessarily anything that they can do, because this is all stuff that you're going to be doing. You're going to be loading it into your maintenance management system. So there's nothing there, but you could also add in there, it says PMs go live, right? Preventative maintenance systems go live. You could also say, hey, our team's going to be doing preventative maintenance in the laundry room. Can we take your laundry room supervisor, have them shadow person X who's going to be in there performing it? We'd love to let them know specifically, what we're doing, how we can prevent breakdowns in the future. And we've noticed that the laundry door always has an issue, or I saw the guys use duct tape to put over the sensor, or whatever it might be, right? Just ensuring that they're a part of it, and involvement, because people love to be involved. And if you can take a laundry room supervisor that's already down there doing thousands and thousands of pounds of laundry a day, and you can add an element that is maybe more technical, that they get to use less of their hands and more of their brain on, I think that they're going to be a lot more grateful for you, especially now that you have that department involvement. Okay, the next key thing you're going to want to focus on is developing your engineering budget. So what I put in parentheses there is YOY, standing for year over year, or zero based. There's two different ways that this can be approached. A lot of it is dependent on your controller and your property specifically. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both. I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to really lay into that. That's something that, if you're interested in, you can look at. But the basic is year over year is you take what you spent last year, depending on where you think you're going to be this year, you add a small percentage increase or decrease. And the zero based is where you start from scratch, right? Where you say, okay, that's great. This is what we spent last year in landscaping. But this year, because that's done, I'm going to start from the ground up and develop my own budget. So on the left, I have just a sample payroll, and on the right's more focused on the labor aspect of it. So there you can see there's, I don't know, 100 line items on there, some of which you're going to use often, some of which you don't. The best thing you can do for this is, which we're going to get into in a minute, is cross-training and shadowing other departments. So if I were you, I would absolutely go over to accounting, sit down with their controller or the person that's in charge of helping the engineering department, and ask when you can come cross-train with them and shadow them and say, hey, for the next month, I'd like to spend an hour, or let's say for the next month, I'd like to spend a total of 8 days, 1 hour a day with you, just going over how you do the budgeting, how the other departments are. Is there anything I'm missing? It's really going to shortcut your finance knowledge, and it's going to be very helpful. They're going to give you some insights that I know I can't, and something that is going to be just invaluable to you. And everybody loves it when you take initiative in wanting to cross-train. If there are any accountants or former accountants out there, no offense, but if someone were to come in my department and want to learn accounting, I think I'd be pretty pumped up, because it's not every day that someone shows a very unique interest in numbers, right? If you're in the engineering department, the biggest thing that could happen to you today might be a major flood, disaster, refrigerant leak. You could have some pool spa malfunction. You might have a water feature go down, right? You have some pretty big everyday occurrences. For accounting, somebody may have put a zero in the wrong place, and they're going to have to do a forensic accounting. It might not be that exciting. So to take an interest in them is going to be very exciting. I wanted to quickly also show you. So while you have your budget here, you're also going to be developing a couple different other things. So that's an example of a P&L budget. But I wanted to show you. Let's see, where is it? Let's see, I think it canceled out on me. I'm sorry, but I wanted to show you. Oh, here it is. A couple other things that you're going to have to create, which are going to be really helpful to you. So here's a sample capital expenditure plan. Now, these are things that you're going to have to figure out with your team again. So CapEx, there's a 5-year soft goods, 7-year hard goods replacement. And this is something that's going to be just very focused on upgrading your facility over time. And that's going to be a dedicated cost. Maybe I can do a separate training on that. And then here's something else that you're going to want to develop too. When you start doing your meter reads, you're going to start tracking your perhaps your rooms occupied, your covers, cooling degree days, heating degree days, total BTUs used, rooms, covers, etc. And then at the end, it's going to give you, this summary so that you can take it and apply it to what you call your KPIs or your key performance indicators. Now, key performance indicators are great. They're only helpful unless you have useful data. And getting useful data can be very difficult because it requires a lot of consistent schedules that you have to follow rigorously, weekly, daily, sometimes. But once you have all these data points collected at the end of the year, it is so amazing to look back and be able to predict exactly where you're going, why you're going there. I am a firm believer in the saying that if you do not know your job well enough in numbers, you don't know your job. And that's kilowatts per square foot, BTUs per square foot, what's your general typical consumption per square foot. There's a list of KPIs out there that I can send you if you like, but it's so helpful to have because you're just much more educated and getting that information, turning it into useful data that you can then present to other people, let's say your executive committee or other boards, and they know why certain things cost the way that they do. It feels really great to be able to know exactly why you got to that point. So when someone comes up to you and says, well, why is our electric bill $37,000 this month? And you can say, well, the reason is because our typical consumption at this point is X amount of kilowatts per square foot, and we were oversold by this many people. Plus, we also had the rate increase from the electric company go up X%, and there's your justification. And that's all that it takes. And your boss and the controller, they'll take that, they'll use it as a justification, and that's it. It's a whole lot better than sitting back going, I am not sure why our electric bill is higher this month. Maybe the guys left the lights on longer. Right? That's not going to work. So that segues into an even better part of this, which is your communication with other departments. And before I forget, how can housekeeping help you even more? So by developing that relationship with them when they're going into all these rooms, and if you roll out a plan called the Lights Out program, and you have 1,000 rooms at your property, maybe you have 200, doesn't even matter, maybe you have 100, but housekeeping, again, having a larger staff, you're going to be able to do morning shift meetings. Perhaps they can cross-train on yours, you can cross-train with them, and you can ask them to go out there and help enlist their help to turn off the lights in specific rooms or to write down the temperature. They can be your data collectors. It's so great to duplicate your team and saying, hey, if your people are already in the room anyway, would you mind having them record the thermostat and let me know what the make on it is, and training them to do that. Now all of a sudden they have 75 room attendants who are going in there recording your data for you, coming back, and they just made your job significantly easier. So just another latent benefit of having their help. So back to this communication. You are going to be the ambassador for your department. I mean, you are the president of the engineering department within your organization. People look to you when things are going well, and they look to you when things are not going well. Mastering the art of diplomacy is something that I think it has a priceless value on it. So diplomacy as defined of or concerning the profession, activity, or skill of managing in international relations. So why did I put international in there? I put international because if you're in the engineering department and you go up to housekeeping, you go to the front desk, you go to your boss who's not in engineering, talking to them about your day is almost like a foreign language. They don't know dual biocide. They don't know boilers, chillers. And when you're working on your 600-ton York chiller and the programming went down, or PLCs, they're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? I don't care. Just tell me what happened today. Give me a summary. How are we doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Or they want the cliff notes. Well, that's exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be managing the international relationships between your department and every other department that's going on. And it is your goal not to wear your heart on your sleeve, hold a calm, cool, collected face. You're going to have things that hit the wall. I mean, you're going to have some severe problems, some flooding, some maybe I hope you don't have a fire. You might have some key refrigeration equipment go down. There's going to be a lot of legitimate reasons to panic, but when people look at you and they see that you are calm, collected, self-assured, confident, and they know you have this under control, it's going to give them a sense of relief. They are going to know that you have this taken care of, that they can rely on you not to freak out. And you're also going to have to go to a lot of different departments and be the one that's responsible for calming them down. It is a big deal when people who don't know everything that you know experience small issues, and you're there to kind of relieve that pressure. So being diplomatic and going from department to department, empathizing with them, understanding that their problems are important. They may not be the most important, but your job is to make them feel heard, to make sure that you are listening, that you are taking what they say seriously. You do know that it's of importance to them, and that you are going to assign it accordingly and deliver it in such a manner that they respectfully understand when you're going to take care of it, and know that it's going to be handled right, and getting in there and making sure that you're that diplomatic leader. I think that anything you can read about diplomacy, there's a fabulous book that I love. Even if you don't have time to watch it, maybe it's on audio. It's the Ernest Shackleton endurance book, where Ernest Shackleton, a great explorer, takes a group of I believe it's 24 sailors down in some extreme conditions, and here he has every different type of personality on the boat that's there. Some conflicting, some work well, some don't, and how he mitigates it, handles it, manages it to make sure that nobody throws someone else overboard in the middle of the ocean and can never to be seen again. I think it's pretty amazing. So look into whatever you can for diplomacy. It's going to be something that helps your career immensely. So who again, I mentioned this earlier, I keep bringing this up, but the engineering department chief engineer is responsible for communicating with the front desk, with housekeeping, with security, with all vendors. You have guests, you have the executive committee, you might have additional boards, and then you of course have your team, and your goal is to balance all of that. Now, how you do that is, there is some strategy in it for sure, making sure that you assign the right personalities on your team to be the liaisons for each one of those other departments if you can. There are often times where you're going to have morning meetings that involve all of them, and you don't want to send the wrong person down there that doesn't represent your department the way that you want it to. And it's not that they're not capable, but just understand that the personality types are there, and that you're putting the right person in the right area. So again, that kind of ties back into diplomacy. That's something that you can train once you read up on it and understand it. It's a training course I would put out to the rest of my team. Everybody can benefit from it, truthfully. But as the chief, you're going to be communicating with everyone all the time. I made a video about this earlier. One possible drawback of the chief is that your phone is going to be attached at your hip, and it is seldom going to be silent. There are going to be days where if it doesn't ring or beep at you for more than an hour or two, you might think something is wrong with your facility, because especially if you manage a large team, you're not going to have the luxury of being off. It's okay, because you're going to have some good systems in place, but they're always going to be checking in with you. I'd rather have it that way, frankly. But you are going to be the heart of the department and the communication hub. So everything's going to come to you, whether it's, hey, this guy called in sick, I wanted to let you know, and we changed this person over, or we had, just so you know, tonight we had a sprinkler head leak, etc. So there's going to be that, but communication, you're going to be at the forefront of it and responsible for it. Okay, to the typical experience required for a chief. This is kind of a hodgepodge page, but I've seen it range for 3 to 5 years, and that can be in supervisory management roles. It doesn't necessarily need to be the director of engineering. There's so many synonymous terms for it: director of engineering, chief engineer, maintenance manager, however you want to call it. But it depends. They do want you to have the experience mainly with the facility, and then again, your management. So if I had to put a weight on management versus systems and programs in terms of the building, I would probably say 60 to 70% of your experience, they would prefer to be kind of hands-on in the trenches, and then the 30-40% to be managing people and a team. So there's somewhat of a trade-off there. I wanted to put this in there, though, that a recent study showed employers were 84% more likely to hire someone with the right attitude, even if they lacked the required training and skills. So the only challenge that I saw with this is, if you don't put it on your resume, they're not going to consider you from the beginning. So I don't know how you're going to get around that, but that is 100% true. I've had some recommendations by previous staff that would say, hey, would you look at hiring my friend or my cousin or I knew this person. And they'd come in and I'd say, tell me about yourself. And we'd start talking, and I'd realize that they had a great attitude. They were a go-getter. They took initiative, but maybe they weren't that well versed in some aspect of the job. But knowing that you're going to have someone who will assimilate to the team is going to be key. So your attitude will absolutely push you to the furthest heights of your career. And I think that was a very great reflection that people agreed. It's more about your attitude and willingness to learn rather than your abilities. And going back to Ernest Shackleton, he actually said the same thing. He said, okay, would you rather have the world's greatest skilled carpenter, or would you rather have someone with the world's greatest skilled carpenter with a bad attitude, or someone who's never swung a hammer and doesn't know what end of it to hold, who's a great personality? He said, I'll take the person with the right attitude all day long. Okay, then down to the bottom. Typically, they look for people that have, I'm sorry, I forgot to put 3 to 5 years, but 3 to 5 years experience actively serving in an engineering management environment. The preferred certifications are HVAC. So for those of you who don't know, heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Oftentimes you'll see a slash on the back of it with an R, standing for refrigeration. Air conditioning and refrigeration are different, so don't confuse that. EPA universal certification and a CPO certification. So what is it about those three that stand out the most? Well, the HVAC covers your boilers, your chillers, your central plant, and gives them the idea that you have a great understanding for how air handlers work. If you know anything about air handlers and common area space, then you must know about preventative maintenance. You must know that it's the requirements that need. So there's kind of the trickle down effect, that it's like we said earlier about the gym. There are certain things you can focus on that are compound movements, and HVAC is going to be one of those compound movements, because plumbing's tied into it, controls, you have your building automation system. You have so many different integral parts wrapped into HVAC, which is why they look for that. EPA, that pretty much ties into that, but that's just saying that you're verified to know that you know how to work on the equipment, and you've taken a test to prove it. CPO, the certification, for those of you who've done the certified pool operator test, know that, yeah, it's a 2-day course, fairly straightforward. I would say it's a relatively easy exam, but the reason they like it, again, is because just like HVAC, it's one of those compound movements that plugs into it. These things are typically large bodies of water. You might have 3 or 4. You might have 30 spas on individual decks that are going to take up a considerable amount of time. And just like the HVAC, if you have a 90,000-gallon pool and you've got your certification, they know that you have an idea on chemicals, on emergencies. They know that you understand pumps, flow rates. And again, maybe you're not the guy down there or gal down there changing out these pumps and digging out the sand of the filter, but they understand that you know what is required and you have the managerial view, bird's eye view of how to operate these things, because there's, again, so much that ties into it. Working knowledge of electrical systems. Electrical systems can range from low voltage. Maybe they are the low voltage lighting. They could be your building automation controls. They could be VAVs. It could be a handful of different things. It could be breakers in each one of the rooms. But again, a general understanding. Plumbing meaning they don't want you to calculate flow rates. Well, as a chief engineer, I take that back. You might have to. So plumbing, they want you to understand all the basics of that. Something that I didn't put in here, plumbing / hydronics. For those of you who live in colder climates, they need to rely on you for maybe you have a flat plate heat exchanger or an economizer, something that they know that, again, you understand the larger infrastructure of it, reading plans, everything related to plumbing. We talked about HVAC. We talked about boilers, swimming pools, and spas. Working knowledge and methods and principles of engineering required. So that's kind of a blanket statement, but I did take this from a job post that I saw from a really well-known organization out there. So what is working knowledge of methods and principles? Again, it's more of that mindset, knowing that you can do proper deduction, reasoning. You're not going to jump to hasty conclusions. And like we talked about, being diplomatic, they understand that you're going to be calm, collected. And when you do make a decision, that it's well thought out, logical, reasonable. It's involving other departments. It is kind of capturing all the working parts and moving parts that might be going on at your facility. So if you have to close down one area, it's not, oh, we need to close this area so we can perform a tenant improvement. It's, okay, well, we're going to close this area. We're going to notify this department. We're going to have alternate route signs printed up. We're going to put this in place, and these are some of the other things we're going to do in place. Just knowing that you're thinking these things through. So yes, there are going to be aspects of the job that you're going to have to do deductive reasoning and calculations and legitimate engineering work, but then they also want to know that you have that mindset when it comes to training and developing your team, so that it's all encompassing. Must be strategic and have strong business acumen. Again, kind of tying back into that, if you were to emphasize to your team, hey, there's a treatment room in the spa that's down, can you repair it so we can get it back in operation? They don't want you to look at it as just another room in the facility. They want you to have an understanding that that treatment room services 7 guests a day, and the average service costs $200. So at 7 guests, that's $1,400. And if we have that room down for an entire week, we're going to have it down for a significant amount of money. And they want you to realize that if the parts are rushed, and let's say you spend $1,000 to rush order parts to repair something in that treatment room, because again, it costs $1,400 a day when it's down doing services, not to account for that, not including the fact that it also provides a job and income for a staff member. So they want you to realize the importance of each one of the areas and the rentable or value of each square foot in that facility. If it's in a boiler room that there's a leak on the floor, okay, maybe you can let that go from some condensation or something. But they want you to understand that your business acumen needs to be dollars and cents, and this goes back to understanding the your job in numbers. So this is another aspect of it. If you look at every room in your facility as a revenue source, and every time a square footage of revenue of that room goes down, that is now a negative, and it's allocated at your department. And they're saying, okay, hey, the clock's ticking. So again, if it's $1,400 a day, costs $1,000 to rush order a part, I do that deal all day long because it gets it back up and running, gets back operational, serviceable. People are making money, and you are now back in the black. Good communication and interpersonal skills. Communication we touched on. You have to communicate the right things, and making sure that you understand communication is what's understood, not necessarily what's said, is a big deal. And you have to have that translated all the way through the rest of your department, because having them send the wrong message to guests, vendors, or other people, they are going to send the wrong message, and it's not going to reflect well on you. I kind of liken it to the person bagging groceries at the grocery store. You can walk in, you can do a great job. The person can help you down the aisle. They can bend over backwards. The person at the deli can recommend some really top choice meat, some seasoning, etc. Then when you get to the checkout, if the person who's bagging your groceries is rude to you, all of a sudden everything that they've done just has been negated by that one person's attitude. So make sure that your communication is just on point. Interpersonal skills we talked a little bit about already, which is diplomacy, and then conveying the right message and being empathetic. I think empathy with your staff, with your other departments, and with just every interaction that you have is going to be key, because again, you are the person that can solve all of the building's problems. And when people come to you, they have their problem, and they take it serious. It's very important to them, and you need to show that you understand that, and you're going to do everything you can to get it resolved. And you're very sorry that they're experiencing that. Lastly, proficient in, again, these, I think nowadays these are very basic, right? You have to have some computer skills. Word, you're going to be drafting a lot of different letters. Excel, you're going to be doing a significant amount of spreadsheets. If there's one class I would advise everyone to take, it would absolutely be an Excel class. You will not be disappointed. PowerPoint, Outlook is obviously just their mail. So if there's anything else people might use, and change of that. And then Hot Sauce. Hot Sauce is just a maintenance management system. So that's what those are. Physical requirements. Again, this is just a blanketed statement that I found. Most work tasks are performed indoors. Positions requires walking. Must be able to exert well-paced ability to maneuver between functions occurring simultaneously. Grasping, writing, standing, sitting, walking, repetitive motions. So you're going to be in some contorted positions. If you have the luxury of wearing a suit and sitting behind a desk and doing some management by walking around, maybe not as much. But those of you that get to wear the uniform, you understand that there are not a lot of clean days. And I think on average, I would walk between 6 and 10 miles a day. We were getting a new pair of boots every 3 months just because we're wearing them out. And it's physically strenuous. I mean, there are days where you're down in the central plant helping your team pull off a plate on the back of a chiller that weighs, I don't know, 1,000 pounds. And you're there making sure you have to do it. And then right after that, you have to hop back to your desk, fire off an email, perhaps to the HOA board president who sent you a question about a budget. And then next you're going to, go train a new hire. So it's a very, very dynamic role that is also very rewarding. But physically, it is something that is exceptionally demanding. So definitely be prepared to do that. Walking around is the best way to see it. Another requirement I would put in there is come at different times. Everyone likes to show up 8 to 5 or whatever the morning shift is, but don't forget, you can see a lot of different angles of your building or facility at different times of the day. Work with your evening shift, work with your overnight shift. Yeah, it's painful, but if you want to have a successful team, that's something that you absolutely need to hop into. Okay, without getting too carried away on that, the last tip on this is cross training. Cross training is free. And when people see that you want to learn and that you're taking the initiative, they're very excited. So whether you're encouraging people on your team who are interested in learning to go from maybe your room call division to the central plant, encourage cross training on your team. But this also goes for you. I would absolutely start reaching out to other departments, even if you think that they don't have anything to offer. First of all, that's the wrong mindset to have. But second, you can absolutely learn something from everyone, especially other directors, department directors. So shadow your controller, go to your accounting department, go to your housekeeping department, look at the way that they do maybe their labor forecast. Maybe there's a way that they're doing their capital expenditure program. There's so many different things that they are doing that you might be able to take a few little nuggets here and there that will provide you with some really great information. So cross training is free. It's such an opportunity for you out there to get free training from other seasoned veterans and departments, which are going to do what? Give you great experience that you can now put on your resume. So let's say you work somewhere for 5 years and they say, well, do you have any housekeeping experience? Well, yeah, every week for an hour of your day, you spent with the director of housekeeping going over ordering supplies and how they calculated par values. I mean, things that are really going to transition you, serve you well throughout your career. So there's absolutely things that that you're going to benefit from. Okay, well, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to mention 2 more things. On this last part, I had develop a route around the key people. So again, these are the essential things that you need to do as a chief engineer. I'll never forget a story I heard from somebody who said that in order for them to get in front of their boss, every day they would walk a route because they knew where their boss went. And they'd say, okay, at 9 o'clock, he's in this meeting. At 11 o'clock, he's there. At 10 o'clock, she's there, whatever. And he would ensure that he had, clipboard in hand. And at 10 o'clock, he is walking by that person and making sure he makes contact with them, because you want to be salient, you want to be top of mind, you want to be engaging, you want to be interactive. And I thought that was really clever. So I would encourage you to develop a route around the key people in your environment as well. Lastly, remember the gym analogy. There's going to be a lot of flashy pieces of equipment that do technically work as exercise equipment, but they're not that compound movement. They're not going to help you grow the biggest. You're going to have to be in there a long time to get the results you want if you're only doing the hip extension thing, right? I mean, that's probably a great piece of ancillary equipment, but it's certainly not going to benefit you overall. So make sure you're focusing on what's going to move your career the furthest, the fastest as well, and that's something that's going to be the most beneficial. And then finally, you're going to be pulled in so many different directions, and the best thing you can do is, yes, empathize, ensure that the people who are coming to you with their problems know that you hear it, that you appreciate their concern, that you are going to get it resolved, but that you're going to have to take care of it appropriately, because you do not want to be distracted from the vital few things you need to be focusing on by the trivial many, as has been said. Well, other than that, that is everything in a nutshell that you need to be focusing on as a chief engineer, or to become a chief engineer, without getting too much into a deep dive. So I hope you found this beneficial. I would encourage you to check out the website. If you haven't done already, it's bosspitality.com. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It would mean a lot. My goal is to just continue to provide value to those in the engineering community. And I really appreciate you taking the time to see it through this far, because it means you're somebody who is interested in continuous learning, and you're going to be committed to that. And I know that people like you are going to get where you want to go because you're ambitious, you take initiative, and you have that mindset. So please subscribe. It would mean the world to me, and I look forward to sharing additional information. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.